My name is Marley Quinn. I'm the bride's younger sister, the one who designed every wedding invitation, menu, name card, and the custom logo printed on the napkins. But that afternoon, when I stood at the wedding gate, in the sapphire dress I spent an entire month's salary on, the receptionist looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, you're not on the list." My mother walked over, completely unfazed. She spoke softly, but loud enough for me to hear. "Don't make this harder. Today's not for people who create discomfort." I smiled, even though it felt like something had crushed my chest. Then I won't be bothering the family anymore. Have you ever been treated like a stranger by your own family? If this story resonates with you, leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe to the channel because right after this, I'll tell you why I was erased from a wedding I helped create from start to finish. I grew up in Spokane, Washington, where winter blanketed porch roofs in white and summer carried the scent of pine from the northern mountains. Our house sat at the end of a quiet street, with a lawn my mother always kept as tidy as the front of a greeting card. Everything looked perfect, inside and out. But the older I got, the more I realized, in my family, things weren't arranged to be fair. They were arranged to look right. My sister, Brielle, was 3 years older than me, and early on people said she belonged on a stage. Tall, blonde waves like a shampoo ad, and a smile that made any stranger feel welcome. Brielle was the kind of girl other mothers would point to and tell their daughters, "You should be more like her." Me? I liked sitting quietly, sketching on the backs of old bills, creating entire worlds in black ink. Worlds no one else could enter. My mother, Linda, used to be a second-grade teacher. She believed in putting everything in its proper place, and in her eyes, Brielle was always sunshine on a rainy day, while I was independent, doesn't need looking after. I remember when I was 8, I showed her a landscape I had drawn. A small cabin in a pine forest, smoke curling from the chimney, snow covering the roof. She glanced at it without lifting her eyes from her magazine and said, "Cute. You're still into all that drawing stuff." I nodded, but I'd already learned that cute wasn't a compliment. It was a polite rejection. Meanwhile, Brielle brought home photos from school dances that Mom taped to the fridge. One time, she even hired a professional photographer when Brielle was voted prom queen runner-up. And the painting I won a statewide art competition with? She folded it up, shoved it in a drawer, and never mentioned it again. Things became clearer after my dad passed away. He died of a stroke. One autumn evening when I was 16, we were having dinner. He stood to get more wine, then stumbled, grabbing the edge of the table, lips moving without sound. Mom panicked and called 911, and I just stood there, gripping the back of my chair, heart frozen. He died on the way to the hospital. From that day on, Mom was no longer the same. She shifted all her attention, or more precisely, all her expectations and desire for a perfect image, onto Brielle. They went to spas together, attended fashion shows, had lunch at expensive brunch spots where wealthy housewives gathered. I usually stayed home, headphones on, sketching while the washer hummed downstairs. Sometimes I thought, maybe Mom needed someone to fill the void after Dad died. And that someone wasn't me. She often said, "You've always been good at managing on your own. I don't have to worry about you. But Brielle, she's more fragile than she looks." I used to believe that. Believed that being ignored meant I was stronger. But the truth is, I didn't need anyone assigning me a role. I wanted to be seen, to matter. Senior year, I wrote all my college applications myself, searched for scholarships, mapped out my own plans. When I got a full-ride scholarship to an art school in Oregon, I brought the letter home, hands shaking as I handed it to Mom. "That's good. But that far away? Didn't you think about staying closer to home?" Brielle chimed in. "Oh, Mom, she's always dreaming up those indie artsy vibes. Let her go be weird." I held my silence. offering only a faint smile. But for the first time, I wondered, if I really disappeared, would anyone in this house even notice? I went away for college, and like Mom said, I managed. I studied hard, took on freelance design gigs for small cafes. Every summer, I still came home, still brought gifts for Mom, still asked Brielle about her life. But every time, I felt like a guest. The doors stayed open, but their hearts had long closed. I never blamed anyone. I thought, maybe I really was weird. Too quiet, not good at small talk, not as dazzling as Brielle. But I didn't realize was that this not enough would be the reason they erased me from the very wedding I had helped create. When Brielle announced her engagement, I was genuinely happy for her. I didn't say it, but I had this quiet hope that this time I'd truly be included. Not the outsider looking in, not the girl they mentioned with a shrug. Oh, her. But part of the family, part of the joy, part of a shared memory. One evening, I was finishing edits on a design draft when my phone rang. It was a FaceTime call from Mom, and I nearly dropped my tea when I saw both her and Brielle on screen, looking thrilled like they'd won the lottery. "Marley," Mom began, voice oddly sweet, "your sister has a favor to ask." Brielle glanced at her, then smiled. "You know," she said, "we're planning the wedding. But honestly, we're maxed out. Not everyone can afford those high-end agencies from New York like on Pinterest." I nodded, still unsure where this was going. "Shh." Brielle turned the camera toward a mood board on the wall. Wedding dresses, a beige ivory color palette, peonies, and a few serif fonts. We figured... You're a designer, right? You could help us design the invitations, menus, small things. You know, save some money. It'd be your wedding gift to us, like a family discount. Mom added, "You're talented, and you understand our style better than any outsider. What could be more fitting?" I hesitated for a few seconds, not because of the work, but because of the way they said it. Like I wasn't family, a budget-friendly option. "Sure, I'll do it." Not because they were sweet or persuasive, but because I still had that tiny flicker of hope. If I gave it my all, if I created something truly beautiful for Brielle's big day, maybe this time I'd be part of the picture, not the frame. I started by sending Brielle a design survey, her preferences on colors, style, layout. First, she didn't respond. Days later, she finally texted back. "Make it classy, nothing cheesy. Beige, ivory, gold maybe?" I spent nearly 2 weeks hand-drawing floral borders, picking fonts and coordinating color palettes. I treated it like a high-end brand project, because I thought, this is my family. Surely they're worth that. I sent the first draft around midnight with a message. "Take a look. I hand-drew all the floral borders. Let me know if you'd like any changes." The next morning, Brielle replied, "The font's kinda, I don't know, old. I like something more modern, and the borders feel a little too busy. Mom says keep it simple." Not a word of thanks, not a single acknowledgement. But I still made the edits, and sent it again. A few weeks later, the final design was approved. I sent the files to a premium print shop I'd worked with before. I even covered the deposit myself to secure the printing slot on the right date. One evening, I checked the wedding website, a clean, elegant page that I had also built for them. I scrolled down to the Meet the Family section. There was a photo of Brielle with Mom, a formal introduction of the groom's family. I stared for a while, scrolling up and down. My name wasn't there, not a single space made for me. I sent Brielle a gentle message. "Hey sis, looks like a small oversight. My name's missing in the family section. I can add it if needed." Almost 3 hours later, Brielle texted back. "Oh really? Weird. Must have forgotten when we sent over the info. Go ahead and add it." I added my name, wrote a short line about my design role, and saved the update. But the next day, Mom messaged me privately. The website is mainly for the groom's guests. Try not to get too detailed with behind-the-scenes roles. People might misinterpret. I had been to Namur 4 trips that year, and each time felt more like a misinterpret what? That I wasn't part of the family? That I was just the help? That I inserted myself where I wasn't invited? I didn't even know if I felt angry or sad. I only knew my heart went a little colder. I didn't delete my name from the site. But after that, I only sent revisions when they specifically asked. Brielle kept messaging requests. Can you do the menu design? Also cocktail napkins, same logo style, please. I'll send over the place card names later. One night, I looked at the pile of printed drafts filled with specs and notes and asked myself, if I didn't do this, who would? And if I disappeared, would anyone notice? I didn't have an answer. I only knew that even as I was designing every corner of that wedding, in their eyes, I was still an outsider. Allowed near, but never invited in. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got the official seating chart from Brielle so I could create the table layout board. It was detailed, grouped into bride's family, groom's family, college friends, business partners. I printed a draft copy, then used highlighters to mark each group by color. I read it top to bottom 3 times. My name wasn't on it. Not at the family table, not anywhere. I tried to stay calm. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they left my spot blank because I knew the layout and would fill it in later. I called Mom. Hey, Mom, I was working on the seating chart and I noticed my name isn't listed. There was a pause and then Mom replied, like she had rehearsed it. Well, you're helping coordinate, right? You won't be sitting down like a guest. You'll probably be running around, managing things. I figured this way you'd be free. It's just easier. I bit my lip, clutching the phone. But I'm not the wedding planner, Mom. I only helped with the design. Well, it's all part of helping out. Everyone pitches in. Don't take little things to heart, okay? I whispered. Okay. And hung up before my voice cracked. That night, I went to Nina's house. I brought the seating chart, the guest list, and the design drafts I was still working on. Nina sat on the floor in round glasses, calm but sharp-eyed. Marley, she said after reading everything, has anyone ever told you that you're really good at defending people who never ask to be forgiven? I gave a weak laugh. They're my family. That's exactly why it's scary. You're being erased from every frame of your own family story. And you still call it an oversight? No invitation, no name on the family page, no seat. That's not 3 accidents, Marley. That's 3 ways of saying, you don't belong here. But they still need your talent. They still need your devotion. They want you backstage, as long as you don't step into the spotlight. I don't know what to do, Nina. Nina softened. It's not about what you do next. It's about seeing things clearly now. Not out of resentment, but because you deserve to be fully present. Without asking for permission. Without asking for permission. It took me 2 more days to finish the seating chart and the signage for the wedding. I still did it, still made it beautiful, even though something inside me was starting to crack. I bought a deep sapphire dress. Not bridesmaid color, but still within the wedding palette. I picked every seam and fold with care. Even though they didn't invite me, didn't assign me a seat, I still wanted to show up with dignity. I bought a vintage silver photo frame from a thrift shop in Fremont and had it engraved. Brielle and Chase, October 15th. I planned to print their wedding photo and place it inside. A personal gift, thoughtful and quiet, like all my gifts had always been. And I still texted Brielle a week before the wedding. If you need anything last minute, let me know. I'm always here. She replied with a single heart emoji. Nothing more. On Friday night, the day before the wedding, I opened my suitcase and tried on the dress one last time. It hugged just right, with a gentle side slit, elegant but understated. I curled my hair, tested my lipstick, stood in front of the mirror, and wondered, tomorrow, will I truly walk in as part of this family? Or will I just be the girl with the toolkit, straightening banners, fixing labels, and disappearing quietly into the dark? I didn't know. All I knew was that I still wanted to believe, even as every sign whispered in my ear, "Don't hope for anything, Marley." But I kept holding on, like someone standing outside a brightly lit house, hoping someone might look out the window, see me in the cold, and invite me in. Or at the very least, open the door once and ask, "Do you want to sit down?" I arrived at the venue an hour before the time printed on the invitation. The very invitation I had designed, every line of ink, every floral border drawn by my hand. The sky was clear, golden sunlight brushing over the roof of the wood lodge nestled in the Sonoma Valley, where each folding chair was already in place. Everything looked so peaceful, I almost forgot the dull ache pulsing in my chest. I walked up the stone path, holding a small tote with the wedding gifts inside, the silver frame I had prepared, in my emergency kit, glue, staples, a roll of backup ribbon. I still thought, no matter what, I was part of this family. I still hoped. At the reception table, a young woman in a white blouse was scrolling through the guest list on her iPad. I smiled and politely gave my name. "Marley Quinn, I'm the bride's sister." She typed it in, paused, scrolled down, looked up at me, awkward. "Ugh, I'm sorry. I don't see your name on the list." I thought I misheard. "Must be a mistake," I said calmly. "I did all the design work for the wedding. My sister probably figured I didn't need an invite." She smiled politely, clearly unsure what to do. "I'll call the coordinator. Give me one moment." A few minutes later, Vanessa, the coordinator I had been emailing, walked up quickly, clipboard in hand. "Marley, right? I thought you were only sending materials remotely. No one mentioned you'd be attending in person." "I'm not a vendor," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm the bride's sister. I'm here to attend my sister's wedding." Vanessa froze, then looked back toward the lodge. I followed her gaze. My mother was walking down the stairs in a soft gray-blue dress, silk gloves on her hands. When she saw me, she stopped briefly, then quickly recovered with a smile. "What's going on?" she asked as she approached. "I'm not on the guest list," I said, eyes locked on hers, waiting for a proper explanation, a correction, or at the very least, genuine surprise. But my mother simply adjusted the hem of her dress and said softly, "Brielle didn't want too many unpredictable emotions on her big day. You understand, don't you?" That sentence, unnecessary emotions, landed as light as a breeze, yet sharp as a blade. I looked her straight in the eye. "You're saying I'm not allowed in?" She responded with a nearly expressionless nod. "You've helped a lot and I appreciate that, but today is your sister's day. Everything needs to stay orderly, let's not make things harder." I laughed, dry and brittle. "So what am I, Mom? A name on the sidelines? Or the hired help for the party?" Right then, a logistics staffer passed by, glanced at me, then asked my mom, "Ma'am, is she with the vendor team?" My mother didn't turn to me. She simply replied, "Just a vendor." There's been confusion. All the surrounding sounds suddenly dulled. The clinking glasses, soundcheck music, the rustle of gowns along the hallway. Everything became a silent white space in my head. A service provider, not family. I gently placed my bag on the reception table, turned around, and walked away. Each step felt like treading on the thin crust of something I once called family. Turns out, everything I'd ever felt wasn't me being too sensitive. It was real, cold, precise, and spoken aloud by the woman who gave birth to me. The large wooden doors at the edge of the hall opened as I pushed them. Noon sunlight spilled across the gravel path. I walked through the parking lot. No one called after me, no one followed. And I knew then, I hadn't walked out of a wedding. I'd walked out of a role I had silently played for 30 years. The agreeable daughter, the uncomplaining little sister, the one backstage, making everything seamless, as long as she never stepped into the spotlight. That role ended today. Not because I quit, but because they never wrote me into the script to begin with. That night, I got back to my apartment close to midnight. The sapphire dress was still on me, but it felt like nothing. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat on the floor. As if standing 1 second longer would break me in half. Today's pain didn't come with tears. It was hard and dense, like a stone lodged in my chest. Not melting, not seeping, heavy on every breath, as if it belonged there. My phone buzzed quietly in my purse. Messages from a few relatives. Didn't see you at the wedding. Heard you came and left. Everything okay? I opened my laptop. Not for anything specific, just to escape the feeling of being invisible. The folder Brielle's wedding appeared, like a slap across the screen. I opened the files one by one. The invitation. The seating chart. The B+C logo I hand-sketched and digitized. Mock-ups I'd sent to the printer. Designs for napkins, cocktail menus, ceremony programs. Each file popped up like fragments of a story I wasn't allowed to be named in. I opened a blank document. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Then stopped. Should I? Should I write it all down? Part of me wanted to stay quiet, like always. Afraid of being labeled dramatic, demanding, or blowing up family matters. But this time, silence didn't feel like peace. It felt like complicity, with the very people who erased me in the most polite way possible. I opened my social media, my personal account, where I usually posted drawings, shared design work, rainy days in Seattle. And I typed, I never thought I'd write this. But today, I was turned away at the wedding of my own sister, the one I spent 6 months designing everything for. Invitations, menus, signage, logo, napkins, and the entire program. No one invited me. My name wasn't on the list, and there was no seat with my name on it, not even a thank you. When staff asked my mother who I was, she replied, "Just a vendor." There's been confusion. I've been silent for years, called the reasonable one, told my work was cute, left out of every family photo frame. But today, I won't be silent anymore. Because hurt doesn't disappear by pretending it doesn't exist. This is what I made, even though I was never allowed inside the room where it would all be used. I attached a set of photos, the wedding invite mock-up, the seating chart with Brielle's name, and not mine, the logo design, the embroidered napkins with my hand-drawn motifs. At the end of the post, I wrote one line. I wasn't invited to the wedding I created. Designed but excluded. I hit publish and shut the screen, expecting nothing. The next morning, my phone exploded. Over 200 notifications overnight. Messages from old friends, past co-workers, even names I barely remembered. The post had gone viral, shared thousands of times, flooded with comments filled with empathy, outrage, solidarity. Oh my God, I made a wedding video for family and got treated like I was invisible too. You're a true artist. You deserve respect. Family doesn't mean they get to erase you like this. This is heartbreaking. The story hits so deep. A major designer reposted my story with the caption, "Thank you, Marley Quinn, for speaking up. Anyone in the creative field has felt overlooked before. But being overlooked by your own family? That takes courage to say out loud." The hashtag designed but excluded started trending. Design blogs, craft pages, women's creative groups all shared my post. A reporter from Modern Artisan magazine messaged asking for an interview. A platform supporting freelance women reached out, requesting to publish my story in their Voices That Matter series. I reopened the post, scrolled to the comments. Amid the flood of messages, one stopped my heart cold. My mother's account. You can say whatever you want online, but don't forget, you're still part of a family. Act accordingly. Sorry, I had nothing to say, and I no longer needed my mother to believe me to know what I did was right. 3 days after the post spread across the internet, my phone rang while I was sketching on the balcony. At first, I wasn't going to answer. Unknown number, California area code. But something told me to pause, wipe my hands, and pick up. A deep, slow voice came from the other end. Marley Quinn? Yes, speaking, I said cautiously. This is Douglas Darden. I'm not sure if you remember me. We met in 2016 when you joined the Western Design Collective mentorship program. I was one of the mentors that year. I sat up straight. Oh, of course I remember. You were the final round mentor who gave feedback on my poster series for the Tacoma Neighborhood Recycling Campaign. He chuckled. Good, I figured you'd remember. I was still processing when he continued. Truth is, I was at my son's wedding that day. But I didn't stay through the full ceremony. When I saw the napkins with floral patterns that mirrored a border style I remembered from your portfolio, I started wondering. Then, when your post went viral, it took me about 3 minutes to connect the dots. I know your design style, and I thought, if your own family can't recognize your value, this industry will. I stayed silent, stunned. Douglas Darden wasn't the groom's father. He was also the founder of Darden and Holt Studio, one of the most respected independent branding firms on the West Coast, known for partnering only with designers who have distinct creative signatures. I'm not calling to compliment you, he said next. I'd like to offer you a job. I furrowed my brow. A job? We're kicking off a rebranding project for a nonprofit that supports female artists. They need a creative director with strong emotional intuition, someone who can craft visuals that aren't beautiful, but meaningful. I thought of you. I don't know what to say. Just say yes. I don't need a resume. I've seen everything I need to. He paused for a moment, then added more softly, I'm a father too. I know the pride that comes from seeing your child recognized. But what I can't understand is how someone could choose to erase a person like you from a story they helped create. I bit my lip, trying to keep my voice steady. Thank you, I just need a little time to think. Take all the time you need. But I believe, deep down, you already know your answer. I'll send more details to your email. We'd love to meet with you next week in San Francisco if you can make it. And Marley, he paused. I hope you know, that moment they shut the door on you, it wasn't your ending. It was the start of the chapter you get to write yourself. After the call, I stayed by myself for a long time. Noonlight streamed across the unfinished sketch on my desk. I placed my hand on the pen, but couldn't draw another line. What I felt wasn't joy, it wasn't triumph, it was something else. A quiet tremble, like standing in a room where you've been ignored for years and someone finally looks you in the eye and says, I see you. Not because I shouted, not because I fought, but because I had the courage to sit with myself and speak the truth. And for the first time in my life, I realized my worth didn't come from being named by someone else. It came from the fact that I kept creating, kept living, even when they tried to write me out of their story. This time, I'll write the next chapter myself. And I'll write it in my own voice. A message from Mom came in on a Tuesday afternoon, just as I left my yoga class. You embarrassed your sister on the most important day of her life. But no matter what, family is still family, Marley. I stood still on the sidewalk, phone heavy in my hand. Part of me had expected it. I knew she'd text eventually. But not to apologize, not to understand, only to twist the story, like she always did. For 30 years, where family had been her excuse to dismiss everyone else's pain. And this time was no different. I waited. Letting emotions speak first had never served me well. I went home, made a cup of peppermint tea, sat at my desk, then opened my phone again. There was another message. From Brielle. Now everyone's asking why you weren't at the wedding. Can we say you were sick or had an emergency? Mom says that's easier to explain. I read the message again and again, looking at each word, like I was staring into her face through the screen. No check-in, no explanation, no mention of how they had shut me out like I never existed, only concern. For appearances. I typed, slow and clear. I won't lie for anyone anymore, especially not for those who erased me from the very wedding I helped create. I hit send, then locked my phone. 2 days later, Mom called. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. Marley, I'm here. Her voice was hoarse, as if she was trying to control her emotions. I don't understand why you had to do this. Posting online, making everyone think this family is awful. They don't know the full story. They're only hearing one side. I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the ceiling, because the other side never wanted to speak. You only ever cared about keeping things looking fine. I continued. I didn't write it out of revenge, Mom. I wrote it because it's the truth. I can't keep pretending anymore. There was a pause, then Mom sighed. Can't you let it go this once? For your sister, for the family. This isn't about just one time. This is a lifetime. I heard Mom go quiet. Maybe she understood, maybe not. But I wasn't waiting for her to understand anymore. Do you think you can forgive us? She asked, for the first time sounding real. Forgiveness is possible, but things won't go back to how they were. I hung up after that, gently, like closing a door that no longer needed to be open. That night, Nina and I went out for dinner. A little Mexican spot in Capitol Hill with spicy enchiladas and cold mint limeade. I told Nina about the call with Mom, about Brielle's message. Nina stayed quiet for a moment, then topped off my glass and asked calmly, "Do you feel lighter?" Not because they changed, but because I don't need them to anymore. That's the biggest step, Nina said, her eyes full of quiet understanding. Not cutting ties, letting go of the need to keep meeting their expectations. Back home, I opened my email. There was a new message from Modern Artisan. The interview with me was ready for publication. They included a short excerpt. When silence becomes part of the pain, speaking up is no longer a choice. It's a form of survival. No one could give me back the years I spent being quiet. But I still had the most precious thing left. Myself. And the voice I've learned to protect. Not for anyone else. Not for anything else. I moved to San Diego in mid-March as the jacaranda trees began blooming purple along quiet streets. The city had a rhythm that felt slow, but never lazy. Like everyone had lived long enough to know there's no need to rush, and kind enough to leave space for others to breathe. I rented a small apartment near Ocean Beach, just a few blocks from the shore. In the early morning, I could hear waves slipping through the open window. At night, the sea breeze would gently push the white sheer curtain like a silent companion. I named my new studio Halfline. The name came from an art concept, the compositional line that isn't centered, but where the viewer's eye lingers the longest. It felt like me. The one placed at the edge of the frame, now choosing her own point of balance, her own deliberate line. The studio was inside a renovated industrial building that housed a shared space for artists. One side was a ceramics workshop, the other a tailoring room with painting and presentation spaces upstairs. I rented a corner big enough for a drawing table, a computer, and an old armchair I found at a flea market. I painted the wall a soft olive green and covered it with mood boards, color tests, and unfinished sketches. Work started coming in more steadily than I expected, maybe because of that post. Maybe because people in the industry, those who had once stayed quiet like me, recognized that courage could be the beginning of something real. I got an email from a furniture brand in Copenhagen, inviting me to design branding for their new artisan line. A studio in Melbourne wanted to collaborate on a photo book for independent female artists. Both places said almost the same thing. We didn't come to you just for your aesthetic, but for the way you see things, layered, story-rich, and brave. I'm not the best designer. But the thing that once made people dismiss me, my emotion, is now the thing that makes people see me. I met Jude on a Saturday morning at a small local art exhibit. He was standing in front of a black and white photograph of the La Jolla coastline in the distance. Winter, faint light, blurred white spots like fading memories. After a moment, he turned to me and smiled. This photo reminds me of the first time I shot with film, when I was 16. Nothing was in focus, but it all felt real. I laughed. I used to hate every first sketch I made. Then years later, I'd wish I had saved them. He held out his hand. Jude Whittaker, photographer, part-time, collector of flawed moments. Marley Quinn, filler of forgotten lines. We didn't talk much that day. But a few days later, Jude sent me a short email with a photo attached. He'd captured my old armchair through the slightly open studio window. I'm not sure the light was technically right. But it made me think, if someone once sat here and cried, it would still be a good place to begin again. From then on, we saw each other more often, sometimes to exchange creative ideas, sometimes to sit by the ocean without a word, watching the waves roll in. For the first time, I met someone who didn't need me to prove anything to stay. Jude wasn't a destination, but he never made me run. At night, after turning off the studio lights, I often sat alone and opened my old sketch files, the rejected ones, the unfinished ideas. I didn't hate them anymore. I even felt grateful for them. That Thanksgiving, it rained lightly in San Diego. The rain didn't make the air much colder, only gave it a soft shimmer. I woke early, opened the window to let the ocean breeze in, tied up my hair, rolled up my sleeves, and played soft jazz in the tiny kitchen. The long wooden table had been pulled close to the window the night before. The chairs were borrowed from the neighbors downstairs, each one different, a padded armchair, a metal folding chair, one still splattered with paint. Mismatched, but no one minded. In this apartment, imperfection was what made everything feel real. The main dish was honey orange roasted chicken I learned from a Turkish chef's video. Jude handled the roasted pumpkin salad and brought a homemade pumpkin pie, wrinkled on the outside but warm-scented enough to fill the room. Nina arrived early with a bottle of red wine and 2 jars of wildflowers from the farmer's market. Her sleeves were still wet from the rain when I hugged her tightly. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Nina said, looking around the cozy room. Guests trickled in. 2 of my former students from the craft design mentorship, the Salvadoran artist couple from upstairs, a studio friend from the workshop building, and an older woman named Ruth, whom I'd met at a community art workshop. She'd hand-knit a table runner for me using recycled yarn. We shared the table, each of us different, yet connected by something unspoken. We'd all once felt out of place somewhere, and had found each other at a pause where no one had to be perfect. Dinner was lively, not loud, but full of laughter and soft spaces in between. I refilled Nina's wineglass as she was telling a story about a difficult school parent. "You know," she said, swirling her glass, "this is the first Thanksgiving I haven't felt like I had to please anyone." Jude, from the other end of the table, called over, "Marley, that chicken's really something. And the table runner? Custom design, right?" I chuckled. "Nope, a gift. The woman who made it never went to design school, but she knew how to bring things together. With her hands and with her heart." The meal went on. Eating, drinking, talking. I quietly looked around. I didn't know what had happened, but the old hurt had stopped bleeding. It hadn't disappeared. Its hold on me was finally gone. The people who had left me behind, forgotten my name, denied my existence, they had faded, like a distant layer of clouds. I turned to Nina and raised my glass. "There was a time," I said, "when I begged for a seat at their table. Just one seat, even at the edge, as long as someone called my name." She looked at me without interrupting. "But I don't beg anymore," I continued, voice low but weightless. "I built my own table, and here, everyone is welcome." Nina clinked her glass against mine, her gaze full of unspoken understanding. The rain outside still fell steadily. No one bothered to close the windows. We lingered together, wrapped in the scent of warm food and the golden light from a string of bulbs stretched across the ceiling. I was no longer with family the way the world defines it, but I was in the center of a circle built on choice, understanding, and no conditions. After all these years, I felt peace, not because someone forgave me, but because I stopped forgiving what was never kind to begin with. After everyone had left, I sat alone at the long table, drying the last wine glass still stained with red at the bottom. The rain still tapped gently outside, but the chill no longer reached me. Maybe at some point in life, all of us have stood before a closed door. Some wait and wait, hoping to be called in. Some knock again, and some, like me, eventually turn away to build another room of their own. I don't know where this story meets you. Maybe you too have been overlooked in your own family. Maybe you're the one who always sits on the edge of the celebration. Or maybe you've asked yourself whether love from family is truly unconditional, as people say. If you've ever been in that place, I'd love to hear your story. Please share your thoughts in the comments, because maybe someone out there needs to hear they're not alone. And if you'd like to follow more real stories about family loss and hope, please subscribe to the channel. Because I believe, no matter how different our journeys are, everyone deserves to enter a home where they are seen, heard, and loved for who they truly are. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. And if today you still don't feel like you belong anywhere, remember, you can be the one to build that place first.